Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Can Eddie Hearn deliver undisputed for Jerome Boots Ennis? I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I want to see it. A lot of you guys want to see it. I also understand, guys stacking their money. But I don't know. I put it this way, Eddie Hearn can. I just don't know if he's going to want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Eddie Hearn's expressed strong intentions, right, to secure an undisputed fight for Ennis in the welterweight division. But he's also expressing a strong interest in not spending more than what he feels is warranted to make a unification or an undisputed bout. Now, Jerron Ennis recently picked up the WBA strap off of Mantis Stanionis. And the Ring Magazine title, which is, pretty impressive to just have two belts and already had a Ring Magazine title. He's only two belts away from becoming undisputed. He got Barrios, he got Brian Norman Jr. To be quite frank with you, I don't know why Eddie hasn't already done his magic to ensure that Boots is going into another unification. We understand mandatories, but we also understand some of these guys who are mandatories, they want their opportunity for the title, but it's not unheard of for a mandatory to take step-aside money twice. Now, let's see what happens, because according to Eddie Hearn, he's been talking to promoters. Bob Arum talked to Brian Norman Jr.'s team, of course, and talking to the PBC to try to figure out what they can do to make the big fights possible, in particular undisputed for Jerome Boots Ennis. But the one thing that got my attention, we started talking about the challenges precluding the fights from being made. And we started talking about negotiating financial terms and aligning the schedules with the other champions. You can stop right there. Financial terms. If they can't agree, the fight doesn't happen. Okay? A unification or undisputed bout is not mandatory. So they don't have to do it. And a way for a person to, people that say put duck sauce on the fried rice is to, have unreasonable demands or have reasonable demands, the fighter, but the promoter being unfair by basically just trying to gouge the non-champion or the champion with one belt, gouge their eyes out to make sure the champion or the champion with more than one belt gets the lion's share of the purse. And I'm not opposed to them getting the lion's share. I'm opposed to these 80-20, 90-10 bullshit that gets thrown around in boxing. 70-30, look, rules are rules when you talk about sanctioning bodies. But you got to be fair. And we know Eddie Hearn will come out here, and when he does do it, he lets the world know how he's overpaid someone. But if he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to talk about that shit. You know what I'm saying? And then aligning schedules. Look, I don't know why that's such a difficult thing. You set your schedule in place, and you know what? You have to make refinements. I think you start having issues with schedules if somebody fights in, say, January, you want them to fight in February. You want them to fight in March, especially if they came out a hard fight. That's being unfair. When we look at Jerome Boots Ennis and Brian Norman Jr., you look at, what's his name, Barrios. I don't see there being an issue with the schedules. The only thing I can see there is as far as Boots and his mandatory who already took step aside. But Eddie Hearn is a smart guy. And Eddie Hearn definitely has a connection with the secret society. If he really wanted to make the Boots fight, he can do it. We all know what Jerome Boots Ennis, he's coming out here emphasizing, man, his focus on legacy, of course, money, of course, but he definitely wants to unify the division as undisputed before he bubbles up to 154, where I think the real challenges are for him. And most people I talk to agree, 154, they have some killers up there. But Eddie Hearn has to get him. I mean, if you can get Berlanga to fight with Canelo in a couple fights, why can't you lock down undisputed for Jerome Boots Ennis? And I understand there are a lot of things that have to happen behind the scenes, and I get it. We just talked about two of them, schedules, finances. I mentioned the mandatories. I understand it's not as easy as we think, but it's doable. Anyway, man, the path seems to be more complex than anticipated. And I just wonder when Eddie Hearn starts talking about his commitment to fighters, man. At first, Eddie Hearn's commitment is to his dad's business. That's his number one commitment. So anyone out there who is getting that mixed up, hold your horses. Let's not take it too stupid. His number one commitment to his father's business that Eddie Hearn has taken over. Second commitment is to making as much money as possible. Third commitment is the well-being of his fighters. So his fighters, they're not his number one priority. Yeah, they're the vehicle to ensure his business continues to make money when it comes to boxing because they have Matchroom has several pokers in the fire. But I wonder if Eddie Hearn believes if Ennis has what it takes to dominate division. Like that's the real question. Does Eddie Hearn believe that Ennis has what it takes to dominate the division? Because although I've said him, I keep saying it, Ennis looks spectacular, but he's vulnerable. I know the Ennis fans don't want to believe that. You don't want to believe what you're seeing. He is vulnerable. It'll take the right person to expose that. And you just don't know if Eddie Hearn feels like, I think Ennis can beat this guy, Brian Norman Jr. or Mario Barrios, but those guys can fight. And just what if Boots is Ennis looking spectacular, all of a sudden he drops his hands and he's showboating. He looks out to the crowd to talk shit to the crowd like he does in fights. And the stars just line up for Norman Jr. Barrios and they clip him. What's Eddie Hearn going to think then? So again, for me, does he believe in him? Now, there's several exciting matchups as Boots continues the quest for the undisputed status. Now, Giyasov is the WBA mandatory challenger, so more than likely he's next in line. You know, Terrence Crawford, I know people want to see him fight Crawford, and I'm surprised to hear people say they think Boots would beat Crawford. I don't know about all that. And I'm talking about going back to when Crawford fought Earl Spence. People out here, the Boots fans said Terrence Crawford put duck sauce on the fried rice. Earl Spence put duck sauce on the fried rice. I'm just not so sure Boots would have beat Terrence Crawford a few years ago, and I'm not so sure he beats him now. Earl Spence, that's a different story. But Crawford moved up in weight, and he's looking forward to a blockbuster event with Canelo Alvarez, so we can forget about that. Now, Virgil Ortiz, although Virgil Ortiz is up at junior middleweight, a fight between him and Ennis will be a thrilling matchup with the two elite fighters and probably maybe the most doable fight because they were already talking about it a lot. They were going to try to work on it. But Boots had, some people say he put duck sauce on the fried rice and decided, let me stay at 147. If he fought a guy like Virgil Ortiz, who wins? I don't know. But Virgil Ortiz has proven that he's back. But Boots has shown that there's something special about his hands too. I just think that'll be a really, really, really good fight because Virgil Ortiz is going to come to fight you. And it's going to show us if a guy like Ennis can handle that Mexican style of fighting with that pressure and just see if Virgil Ortiz will be able to cause the pipe of Ennis to explode. I know that shit sounded kind of crazy, right? But you get what I'm saying. Then there's Barrios, the WBC champion at 147. Barrios is just another opportunity for Boots to add a belt to his collection. But Barrios may be going at Pacquiao, right? So I don't know if Barrios is going to be too keen on fighting a guy like Boots unless Eddie Hearn's going to give Barrios the kind of money he's going to make to fight Pacquiao. So if he's going to make $8 million to fight Pacquiao as a champion, Eddie Hearn's going to have to pay Barrios $8 million to fight Boots. And then I think Barrios will do it. But the winnable fight there for Barrios is Pacquiao. But still, you can't sleep on Pacquiao. But Boots, I think, is more of a threat than Pacquiao. But so he may want even more money. If he's going to get 8, I don't know what he's going to make. Let's say he makes 8 to fight Pacquiao, he may want 12 to fight Boots. So again, it comes back to, like I said, those obstacles in place, like the financial complications. And then Brian Norman Jr., I just think Brian Norman Jr., he's more than just adding a belt. I think Brian Norman Jr. is the real threat to Jerome Boots Ennis at 147. And a clash between those two guys, it's not even about a step towards Undisputed. That's a step to cement who is the top dog at 147. I think most people feel it's Boots, but you got a guy like Norman Jr. out there. You can't just walk around here, man, puffing out your chest with the big gold star, like Chris Eubank Sr. He's a deputy or whatever the hell he is. I just think that's a very, very, very difficult fight for Jerron. But again, let's see how Eddie Hearn moves and if he can deliver Undisputed for Boots, because those names that I mentioned, those are the names that Eddie Hearn's been talking about. You know what I'm saying? Brian Norman Jr. ranked him on the top 10 welterweight, so he's a top dog. He holds a strap. Barrios, top 10, holds a WBC strap. I think Barrios would be the easier fight. Ortiz is highly regarded in the rankings. You got to put respect on his name. Crawford is a big dog. You don't need to even try to explain Terrence Crawford's situation. He's a big dog. Then Giasov is ranked in the top 15. He's an easier picking. So if I had to rack and stack him, I'd say Giasov is the easiest win. Then Barrios. Shit, boy. Norman Jr. Ortiz. Right now, I'd have to say Norman Jr. just because Ortiz has proven himself. Then after Norman Jr., I'd have to say Ortiz and then Crawford. But bottom line, those are some very, very difficult fights, man, for Jerron Ennis. And you just got to understand, Jerron Ennis, I remember somebody like I'm out here taking O's, and Felix Trinidad was out here talking about 3 gold medal, because he beat David Reed, Fernando Vargas, and De La Hoya, all gold medalists, and Trinidad beat all 3 of them. But Brian Norman Jr., man, he out here knocking people out, 27 wins, no losses, with 21 knockouts, man. Barrios, 29 wins, 18 knockouts, 2 losses. Ortiz, 19-0, all knockouts. Giasov, 14-0 with 10 knockouts. So, again, they got some guys out here who can get busy, you know what I'm saying? And it just makes it interesting because Eddie Hearn has a good team, and they're sitting back taking a look at that, you know what I mean? Stellar guys, man, stellar guys. I just want to know what Eddie Hearn is going to do, because it is not easy. It is not easy. I don't know what he's going to do, but I think all these fighters that we're talking about present a mix of not only being champions, but high-ranking contenders, and they just make for an exciting battleground from 147 through 154. And if you ask me which matchup I think would be the most compelling, I think right now, like if we could snap our fingers and make a fight, I make Boots against Crawford. But that's not going to happen. So right now, I would say I say Norman Jr., but I don't think they should. I think he should go a different route, but I think Norman Jr. would probably be the most interesting fight, because I think most believe Norman Jr. beats Barrios, and then it's just him and Boots. Stanley Eunice got clipped, but he was considerably the number 2 guy, but I just think the inactivity hurt him. Anyway, all of that set aside, what's Eddie Hearn really going to do? Y'all sit back and watch how Eddie Hearn moves. See if he really believes in the spectacular but vulnerable Boots Ennis, if he's going to put that money up. That's what I want to see, because one thing for sure, Boots Ennis is a dog. He's going to fight. Boots don't care. I don't even think Boots believes he can lose. But I think the problem is not Boots' belief, it's if Eddie Hearn has a belief in him. He can talk the talk. You heard how he was talking about Deontay Wilder. When he worked with Deontay Wilder for one fight, had us all thinking that Deontay Wilder was back. Saw how that shit went. So Eddie Hearn's a mouthpiece. He's going to do what he has to do, say what he has to say to promote and market his fighters. But when the camera's off, and I'm going to tell you this from experience, I was talking to a fighter's promoter. No kidding. And he told me he thought his fighter was going to lose, was going to get knocked out. He was worried about his fighter. Swear to God, this happened. I'm not going to tell you which promoter told me this shit. Swear to God. And I was like, oh, yeah. He's like, now, if you tell anybody that I said that, I'll deny it. I said, okay, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say your name or say the fighter's name. But I remember after we finished that conversation, I was like, I didn't think anything bad of the promoter. I just thought to myself, he sees what we see. The promoters see what we see. They see the same stuff. So don't get out here and start believing everything Eddie Hearn's saying. Because the shit that we see, he sees. We see the good and we see the bad. He sees the pros and he sees the cons. But the one thing we don't have to worry about is our money. He's got to worry about his money. And that's where you'll see Eddie Hearn come out here and all of a sudden not make certain fights. Because it boils down to him, boils down to his coin, his daddy's coin. He doesn't want to lose any of his daddy's money. Now, if Turkey Al-Sheikh comes on board, we know when Turkey's in the house, every day is Thanksgiving. If Turkey Al-Sheikh throws the money up, Eddie Hearn will make the fight like that, no problem. But if Turkey Al-Sheikh ain't doing this on Eddie Hearn and he's hoping to pack $20,000 into some stadium up there in Philly, the way the money's there and he can pay Norman, I don't know, probably be more than what he wanted before. Maybe a $3 million payday. Boots make, I don't know, $15 million or whatever the split ends up being. Eddie Hearn's got to have to make sure that show sells out because Eddie Hearn can't afford to take a loss. And you're wondering why he was behind AJ the way he was? Because AJ could have fought Butterbean out there in the UK and made $50 million. You know, like, you got to get a stadium for $100,000 or so for any AJ fight. He just doesn't have that luxury with any of these American fighters he's picking up. But if he was able to do that with Boots, Eddie Hearn would have him working that man like a goddamn slave. He'd have him out there grinding because of the money that he could generate. But that ain't the case with Boots, not yet. But I think Boots can get there. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Can Eddie Hearn deliver Undisputed for Boots? I don't know. We'll find out in the breeze.